Hi, Grandma Joyce. We are going to make 2 pumpkin pies today. And normally we wouldn't be dressed like this for pumpkin pie season, but it's very, very hot here. So that actually affects the way we make our crust, by the way. Right, Kelly? And we washed our hands and they're all clean, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we just took these 2 sticks of butter out of the fridge. So they're really, really cold, and that's important. And we're going to put them into our bowl. Okay, you did one, and I'll do the next one. Okay. And then while Kelly unwraps hers, I'm just going to cut them into like tablespoon-sized pieces. It just makes it easier to do it at this point than it does. Oh, there's our kitty in the background. That's right. It makes it easier at this point to do that so we don't have to break our wrist when we're using the pastry knife. That's what this is. We're going to mix our crust together. So I've just cut it into pieces sort of like this. Just makes it a little bit easier. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the flour. So I'm doing 2 pie crusts, which is why I put 2 sticks of butter in. If you're only doing 1 pie crust, like for a quiche or a cream pie, you're going to cut this in half. This is for 2 pie crusts that I'm doing it, because I'm making 2 pumpkin pies. So I've got my butter in there, and then we're going to take our flour out, and we're going to measure about 2 1/8 cups of flour. And I'm not real exact with this, but I'm just going to level off. So we got 1 there, and then we've got 2, and just a little bit more. That's probably just a couple tablespoons. If it was a really cold, damp day, I would add a little bit more flour. But because we're having Santa Ana winds right now and the air's so dry, it actually will make the pie crust a little drier with the air temperature. So it's a little bit more than 2 cups, about 2 1/8. A little bit less today. Oh, thank you, Kelly. Kelly's got our ice water. This is just water with ice cubes in it, and we're going to use that in just a few minutes. But I'm taking my pastry knife, and you can see I've got my flour and my butter here, and I'm just going to work it in. Oops. Okay, so you can see how I'm just using the old wrist.
Yeah.
And it's a little harder because, again, the butter needs to be really, really cold to get a really good pie crust. Now, I don't freeze the butter because that just makes it so hard that it's really difficult to work with. But you do want it pretty cold, as cold as you can get it. You can see I'm just sort of turning the bowl in circles a little bit, just trying to get rid of those big chunks of butter. Right. Now they say that you can use 2 knives and use like a crisscross fashion if you don't have one of these pastry knives, but that's going to take us a heck of a lot longer. So you can pick one of these up at like Bed Bath & Beyond or one of those places and use your coupon, of course, at Bed Bath & Beyond. So I'm just starting to get it incorporated, and when it just starts to look like it's coming together a little bit, I'm going to start to add my ice water. So I've got it right here. I just use, it's a tablespoon, but again, it doesn't have to be exact. But this is like a tablespoon, a soup spoon style. And I'm going to add a total of 4 tablespoons of ice water, but I'm going to do it 1 tablespoon at a time. So there's 1 tablespoon, and I just sort of drizzle it so it's not in one big clump. And that's 1. And then I'm going to go work it in. Again, I'm turning the bowl in circles. Just makes it easier to get everything all done. Now if it gets real clumped up, you can take your knife. Thank you, Kika. I know. We'll tell Grandma Joyce that. Just wait a minute.
Why?
Well, she was trying. She's a girl. She's trying to get in on the video. Okay, you do that, and it gets the clumping all out.
Kika?
So now we're gonna keep going here, and then we'll put tablespoon number. Thank you, Kika, for reminding me. Tablespoon number 2, right? Okay. So tablespoon number 2. And you can see here, I'm just going to sort of drizzle it in there. And then Mr. Cameraman, you can see how we're just sort of moving it in circles, pushing down. Again, good workout for the arm. And then it's time for tablespoon number 3. And normally I wouldn't talk while I'm doing this because I will forget. And that's not a good thing to forget, because then I'll be like, what tablespoon was that, Kelly? Kelly will say, I don't know. All right, so that's 3. And then let's get to number 4. Now again, if I was only making a single pie crust, I would only put 2 tablespoons of ice water in instead of the 4. And I would have put just a little bit more than 1 cup of flour in. But again, we're making 2, so it's 2 sticks of butter, about 2 1/8 cups of flour, and 4 tablespoons of ice water, and that's all that's in it. Just pure, good, yummy stuff. Low calorie too, at least the water is. Okay, so it's just about ready to come together, like little peas. And basically, I stop when I don't see what looks like just flour. So you can see that it's pretty much starting to hold together, like one piece. And I'm just, again, going along the very top edges. And the consistency is just about right. Again, it's a very warm and Santa Ana dry day here, so it's a good thing I didn't put too much more flour in. And there you can see the bowl is pretty much, as they say, coming out clean, meaning there's not any loose flour there. See how it holds together? So I'm going to call that done. I'm going to take my knife again, scrape that all off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it into half. Excuse me, because we're making the 2 pie crusts. Again, if you had one, you would just shape it into 1 ball. But what I'm going to do, get all that good stuff off, is I'm going to shape it into 2. Kelly, you want to get me the wax paper out, or the plastic wrap, rather? So Kelly's going to get the plastic wrap, and with my clean hands, I'm going to pretty much eyeball it, and I've done this enough times to pretty much know what half is, but you can see when you put the 2 together. And I'm just basically rolling it into a ball. And that's almost, thank you, darling. That's just about half of it. There's 1. Put the next one together, and again, the bowl is coming really clean at this point. It crumbles so it holds together.
You want?
Yep, that's our 1 and 2. Okay, Mr. Cameraman, you want to take a look for us and see what it looks like in the bowl? You see the bowl's pretty much clean. Just, I'm not, making it to huge softballs or anything, but I'm just gently putting it together. And now what I'm going to do, this guy probably belongs over there, is I'm going to get 2 sheets of plastic wrap, and I'm going to refrigerate these not as a ball but as a disc, and I'm going to refrigerate them for about half an hour.
Yeah?
And that way they'll get chilled a little bit more, but any more than half an hour and they become almost like blocks of rocks. So it's too difficult for any more than half an hour. But see, I'm just sort of pressing it, just sort of shaping it a little bit, so it's almost ready for me to start rolling out, which will be the next step. And I'm trying to make the edges a little clean here so that it doesn't crack like crazy. It will crack a little bit on the edges, but I'm just wrapping it up. And do a disc. My handy assistant, would you please put that one in the refrigerator? Thank you. And here comes number 2. Just going to flatten it with both my hands just into a disc. And see these edges? If I start rolling, they'll crack all sort of ways, but we want to try to keep it in a fairly nice circle because it'll be easier when we flip it into our pie plates and have a nice, even as possible edge. I'd say that's maybe about, as far as thickness goes, maybe like 3/4 of an inch. All right, so there's number 2. And then we're gonna cover it up. Number 2 in the fridge. Assistant, please. And now we are going to wash up and then we'll start our pie filling. So I'll be right back. Oh, look at that. These are we've got sugar and all sorts of yummy stuff in there. Okay, let's show Grandma Joyce what we've got. This is the ingredients that are going to go into our pumpkin pie. And the recipe that I've always used since I was a teenager is the recipe that's on the Libby's pumpkin pie. They have the bigger cans, but which will make 2, but I only have the small cans, which make 1, so I'm using 2 of them. So the recipe is right on the back. If for some reason your store doesn't have Libby's and you want the recipe, we're more than happy to type that up for you. But what it takes is sugar, which is in here, right? Sugar and cinnamon and cloves and ginger and salt. And your son likes a little bit extra cinnamon and ginger, so when I make it I add a little bit more than what they call for on the label, because that's the way he likes it, and I do everything the way that your son likes it, just so you know. So I already cracked 4 eggs and whisked them up, and I'm going to put those guys in first. Okay, my assistant is going to mix together carefully these dry ingredients that we already mentioned. And while she mixes those together, I am going to mix in the pumpkin. So again, we're making 2 pies. 2 pies, so we're putting 2 cans of pumpkin in. And my son, who actually just left here a couple days ago, he was visiting from Colorado because Aaron and I helped him to get a used 4Runner, same color as your son's. He always loved pumpkin pie, and when he was little, he would always say, "Why are you using the can? Why don't you use the real pumpkins? I want you to cook a real pumpkin and use it." And I kept trying to tell him, you know, it's not as good because, like vegetables are freshest the frozen ones because they grow them and freeze them within 24 hours. But one day I gave in and I made him a pumpkin pie that was made from a real sugar pie pumpkin. And he did like it. And as a matter of fact, he would eat it. And it was grainy and it was tough and it had all these strings in it. And that was the last time we made a pumpkin pie with, quote, real, unquote, fresh pumpkins. So I've always found that the canned stuff is much better. It's the perfect consistency, doesn't have any of those strings in it, and let's face it, it's a heck of a lot easier. Assistant, where have you gone? I know the Angels are playing in the playoffs right now. So today is game 1, and it's hard to direct our attention to pumpkin pie making. All right, so that's going to bring the cats running. Just going to take a little extra scoop with my spatula, get it out. So now, assistant, do you have all the dry ingredients mixed together?
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the eggs, it's just my eggs, and I'm gently folding them in so I don't get a stomach full of egg yolks. I'm just sort of gently mixing it. Now, you'll notice that the bowl that I'm using is just the same bowl that I used for my pie crust. Again, the bowl pretty much comes clean when you make the pie crust, so there's no reason to dirty up another bowl, especially since I'm the dishwasher in the family. So I'm all about trying to not make as much of a mess. So basically I'm just incorporating the eggs into the pumpkin. It takes probably about a minute, because again, I gently do it so I don't end up with a whole bunch of egg yolks that decide to jump outside the bowl. And I'm not using a mixer of any kind. It's not really necessary to get the mixer out, whether you've got a hand one or a stand one. This is just so much easier. Okay, so I've got those mixed together. Okay, and now my assistant, would you like to please we'll take the fork out. Let's give it one extra mix so that we make sure we get all that stuff from the bottom, just so that it is mixed in when we pour it in. Okay. Now if you could please gently pour that in. That's right, hold the bowl with your left hand. That's right, and pour it all in at once. There we go. Just all at once, boom. Okay. Good job. Okay. Gently going to mix all this together. Again, I don't want any to escape onto the counter. See, it's starting to get that sort of brownie color that comes from our cinnamon that we all love so much. We're big cinnamon lovers around here. We always put a little bit extra in everything that we do. Starting to smell good. Despite being almost 90 degrees in here, it feels a little bit like autumn because we've got our pumpkin pie. Okay, now what I'm going to do is put in our evaporated milk. So Kelly's going to shake up the other can. I'll shake up this one. Again, if I was only making one pie, I would only use one can, but I'm making two. So we're using two. Okay. Already washed off the lids. Okay.
Ready?
Hold on a second, babe. Okay, the first batch has to go in a little bit slowly. Okay? Just makes it easier. Do you want to stir? And I'll pour it in. You've got to stir hard though. Hold it and hold the bowl. Kelly loves to cook. On Thursdays, she actually has cooking in her class at school. Thursday is the designated cooking class day, and she is the ringleader of that. All right.
Oh.
Oh, that arm's getting tired, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stir now. Okay, I'm just mixing. It just makes it easier so that it doesn't have any lumps or anything. Okay, and that is pretty much it as far as the filling goes. I'm just going to get it mixed together, making sure that it's incorporated, because you can see there's still stuff there at the bottom. And you want to make sure it's all mixed in, because if it isn't, when you start pouring into your pie shells, it's going to be, one pie is going to be a little bit watery, and the other pie is going to be a little thick, and that won't be very fun. We want them to both be beautiful and lovely and tasty. Okay, so I'm going to put this to the side.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we are about ready now to roll out our pie crust. And I just finished washing my hands. Could you get the pie crust for us, just one at a time? Thank you, my assistant. Pie crust rolling out is probably the hardest part of making any sort of pie, but since I've done so many, I sort of have a science to it, and this is what works best for me. May not be what works best for you, but this is what I found to be the easiest way to roll out a pie crust. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's the taste that counts. Sort of nice to look good too, but okay, I use wax paper. So I'm going to get one sheet for the bottom, one sheet for the top, and you can see they're probably about, I'm going to maybe like about a foot each piece. And I'm going to take my chilled wrap out. And I only do it because Mommy washed her hands. Okay. And then I'm going to put it into the center of the wax paper. That one there. Put this guy on top. My little secret is I take just a couple of drops of water, put it on the counter underneath. That just lets it stick a little bit to the counter rather than moving all around. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rolling pin and I'm going to roll it out. And I want to do each piece one at a time. So center, 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 center around it. What I mean by that is I'm going to roll and then move it to this part, center, and there, and turn it. Just at the beginning, I mainly turn it to really make sure that it's even, because you don't want to have a pie crust that's thick in one area and thin in another. It won't taste good, it won't cook properly. But I'm just trying to turn it around and keep it the same size. Now that's sort of weird, so all I gotta do is peel it off and sort of put it back together. And when I peel it off, I'm also going to flip it. And I usually flip it about 4 times or so in the whole process. And every time I flip it, I try to push those edges back together again. Thank you, Kika. I'll let her know. Kika said the reason for that is because it avoids cracks down the road so that everything is even. Okay, so I'm just going to go from the center, push out, go from the center, push out, go from the center, push out.
Kika?
Now when it starts getting a little bit bigger, a bigger circle, I can actually let go. And I don't have to necessarily keep turning it all the time. But when it's just right out of its ball in that disc, it's a lot more difficult. Okay, I'm just turning it, maybe like about maybe an 1/8 of a turn from the center out, from the center out, from the center out. Now it's getting, the wax paper, you can see it's getting a little bunchy there, so that means it's time to flip it over. Loosen it gently like that, put it back on, turn it over, see how it's wrinkled? Gently pull, and place it down again. Okay, this will be our last, most likely our last go round before it's ready for its pie tin, or pie plate I should say, since I use glass. And I've always used a glass Pyrex pie plate because I think that it cooks better than the tin ones do. You may have to adjust your oven a little bit if you do use tin. Again, I haven't had the best results, but you can get a glass one at Target for probably like $5 or $6. Okay, now I was wrong. I'm going to actually flip this one more time because I can feel it's wrinkling. Again, I gently peel it off. Put it back on, flip it over. You can see all the wrinkles. Don't want a lot of wrinkles. That's why when I can feel that it's getting that way, I want to flip it over, okay? And we're almost there. When I'm done with it, it should just about be touching the sides. And that's the perfect size for a 9-inch glass pie plate, okay? I want it to be a circle. I don't want it to be oblong like an egg. I want it to be a circle. That's why I keep turning it and going little bits at a time. So it makes one big giant circle. And you can see the pie crust, how it's just about at the edges. That one's a little over. Get this guy. And we're all done. Okay? So I'm going to do, that's okay. That little bit's okay. Again, I'm going to gently peel it. Put it back on. Flip it. Peel it off. Now it's sort of loose now because I just flipped that other side. And now it's time to put into the pie plate. So I'm going to grab my pie plate. Okay. And with I'm right-handed. With my right hand, I'm putting my right hand underneath the pie crust. So it's pretty much in the center. You can sort of see my hand. I'm going to line this up so the edge of the crust is a little bit over. And I'm just going to make sure honey, Grandma Joyce can't hear. Okay? So I'm going to lift it up like this and gently flip it like that. Now if I made a mistake, I'm holding it now with my left hand underneath it. and I can gently move it. You see it moving back and forth, but I can't do that much of it because my hand is heating it up, and as my hand heats it up, it's not super cold anymore and it tends to tear. Okay, then I just pull it off like that. Then I'm gently going to lift it up instead of push it into the curve of the pie plate. Like that. Gently pushing it into the curve. And if it breaks, it's not the end of the world. It can be fixed. I'm just putting my fingers down to get rid of any air bubbles. That would be down there. Okay. And then I'm going to even these sides out. Now, I don't think I've ever made a pie crust where each side is exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is, this guy's pretty big, isn't he? He's pretty fat. So we're going to tear a little bit of him off. And we're going to take from the rich and give to the poor. Okay? This guy's a little bit big. Put him over there. Okay. But now we're coming up on some poor people over here. So we're going to have to add a little bit of our pie crust over there. And just keep squeezing it together. This guy's a little sad and poor. So it goes like that. And again, once the filling is in here, it really doesn't make that much of a difference. This is pretty small over here though. I'm going to still have to find some to steal from. So I'm just turning it in circles. Around like that. This guy was pretty fat. I'm going to steal a little bit from him. Now there's different ways to do the edging. You can use a fork to crimp it and just go like this with a fork. You can use a spoon and do pretty little designs. I even have some fall little, almost like cookie cutters that if I make an extra crust and it's for company and I really want to make it fancy, I'll make a separate pie crust and cut those out and paste them on. But for today, we're just making my standard little scallop that I'm going to do with my finger. Let me get this out of here. Now also, if you were making like an apple pie, you would use the same recipe for the pie crust for a 2-crust pie, but you wouldn't have to make this pretty edge at this point. You would just leave those edges as they were, put your pie filling and your sugar and your lemon juice in there, and then put your other pie crust on top. And then you would seal both edges together and cut holes in the top for steam. But since we're making a pumpkin pie, we want the edge to be sort of pretty. So what I've done is just sort of squeeze them together, and then I use my finger, and I just sort of put my finger between the other two like this, and just sort of press down and then move about 1/4 of an inch. It's not a super exciting little scallop, but it's just sort of the standard that I've done through the years. You can see the areas that have more pie crust on them. They actually work out a little bit better. But this pie crust is so warm because it's probably almost 90 degrees right now, and it's 7 o'clock or 7:30 actually.
Oh, Louise.
I know, geez Louise, huh? Okay, so our pie crust is all done.
Done?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to take a break, and I'm going to do the next pie crust. Okay?
You want? Wait.
Okay.
Okay, so we have both of our pie crusts done, and we're just going to revisit the pie filling that we did and just give it another stir, make sure that the sediment didn't settle to the bottom. Then I'm just taking my fork and really scraping along the bottom, making sure that the thick pumpkin incorporated with the evaporated milk. So it seems like it's all mixed in. So what I'm going to do is evenly divide them between my 2 pie shells. Now I found that when I make the filling and I use 2 cans of pumpkin rather than the one large 29-ounce can, that it almost makes a little bit too much. So I've learned the hard way not to try to use every single bit of the pie filling up, because it ends up a lot of times spilling over, and that's not a lot of fun. Okay, so easiest way when you make it in a bowl like this, I think, is just to use a soup ladle. And I'm just going to ladle it into both of the 2 pie fillings. And careful not to get it on the outer crust, because then it'll bake on there, and there's nothing wrong with that, except it doesn't look as pretty. And these pies that we're making are actually for a woman at Erin's work. So we want them to look very pretty. Give it a little pour now.
I'm full.
It's full, and that's about as far as I want to go.
No more?
No more. And I used just about all of it up. Again, I'm being a little greedy because I don't like to waste it, but there's only about a tablespoon or so in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I've got my oven preheated to 425 degrees, and because I'm making 2 pies, I'm going to rotate them probably about halfway through to make sure that they cook evenly. Now, I'm going to actually take these off and be real careful. I have burnt myself more than once with pumpkin pies because you've got to really be careful when putting them into the oven. So you can see they're really moving.
Huh?
Okay, that guy got in. Now the second one, I don't think I'm going to have the option of not using the gloves. But I think I will use the special gloves that we got for Christmas last year from my mom, because they give me a better feel, and these are his barbecue gloves. There we go. So I'm gonna take that. In a perfect world, I really only like to cook 1 pie at a time because I think that they don't cook quite as evenly this way. But what can you do? I actually do have 2 ovens. My wonderful husband, when we first started dating, put in a double oven for me, but I don't really want to heat the house up that much. Now we're going to do it like that. It's at 425, and I'm going to do it 425 for 15 minutes or so.
Done.
So 15 minutes at 425, and then what we're going to do is we're going to turn it down to 350, and we're going to put foil around the edges and switch the pies.
Yep.
Okay?
Okay.
Done.
Okay, and you are going to go up and have your shower now. Wash your hair. Okay, so while our pies are starting off in the oven, I'm going to make what I call pie shields. And they have pie shields that you can buy, but I don't like those. I don't like them because they dig into the pie shells and they leave a mark, and this is much easier. So I'm just going to take a piece of foil, fold it in half. It's about 12 inches. And I'm just going to cut like a half circle right here, which when I open it up is going to be a full circle. And it's going to be, let's see, it's probably about, I guess that'd probably be about 5 inches maybe. Doesn't have to be perfect. And there it is. Isn't that beautiful? Yes, my face, not the foil. But thank you, honey. That's just going to go right over top of the pie crust, and that way it prevents the edges of the pie, the actual little crust, from burning. Because they can cook for about half the time, but if you cook them for the whole time without being covered, they end up getting burned. So I'm going to make those ahead of time, so when the 15-minute timer goes off, I'm going to switch the pies and gently put the foil over top. Okay? Time for Kelly's shower.
All right.
Okay, So 15 minutes are up. Our timer just went off, which was just enough time for Kelly to have shower and hair done and all that good stuff. So now we've rotated the pies, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take our foil that we cut and we're going to gently place them on top of the pies. Now I really don't like using gloves because I don't feel like I get as good of a feel, but I'm really not in the mood for being burned today. So, all right, so our timer just went off, and about 5 minutes ago I actually took the foil off. You don't have to do that, but makes it, the last few minutes just makes it brown, a little bit evener on the top. So I'm going to jiggle them, and they definitely aren't jiggling back, which means that they are done. So here we go. Here's pie number 1. And pie number 2. It's actually bubbling a little bit. And there we are, and you can see that I set them on top of, these are actually from the stove, but you can set them on top of, just anything to elevate it so that the air gets underneath it. It helps it to cool a little bit faster. So these are pretty much done, and they're going to go to Aaron's work tomorrow. But we need a couple hours for them to cool completely before we package them up, because if you package them up warm, they're going to get a little soggy. So there you go. I hope that you enjoyed this little tutorial, Grandma. And Kelly went to bed. She's now asleep and dreaming probably about pumpkin pie. So we love you. Bye.